Kami LaFalcia, welcome back. Welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. It's our Saturday book. This is the final video, video number 4 on the 8 Laws of Change by Stephan Schwartz. And I will remind anybody who maybe didn't see the previous video, number 1 and number 2 were last weekend. Number 3 preceded this. And I mentioned that I have an upcoming conversation that I've recorded with the author, Stephan Schwartz. And it's unfortunately got broken into 2 parts, a short part and a long part. And I really urge you to stick with it, because as the second part progressed, he became more and more passionate about issues that came up in this book. Really interesting man. So let's move forward. We're on chapter 14, the power of intentional awareness. So the best tool that you have for any of this is to focus intentional awareness. And it's why monasteries and dojos center awareness. This is martial arts that focus on mental control, and any place that talks about quiet prayer, quiet meditation, that focused awareness. Meditating belongs to most religions, but it's not religious. It's a tool that has been adopted by religions, but it doesn't need to belong to any particular creed. It's a process, it's a tool. And this really describes many practices, and lots of them have nothing to do with religion or spirituality. They are psychophysiological self-regulation. All of them, saying the rosary, walking the labyrinth, davening if you're Jewish, whirling dervishes, all of these methods are based on the same simple notion of focusing your attention inward. They all incorporate non-local consciousness, because the mind is connecting to the whole of the universe when this happens. And he says that, don't take his word for it. There's loads of empirical observation that supports this belief. For example, the physical effects of meditation on the brain. Meditation traditions are now being called mindfulness, just to stay neutral, to get out of the theological realm and let people understand that we're talking about something physiological. Between 2006 and 2014, there were more than 3,000 papers and studies written about this. This is not 1 or 2 little speculations. This is a broad range of studies over a large period of time. And these studies are not just simple little things. These are really involved. Many studies on meditation exist. They've been studied in the context of treatment for addiction and fibromyalgia and stress reduction, sleeping problems, attention issues, and they found to be useful in all of them. Meditation has proven to be have a major effect on neuroanatomy, and you see the difference measurably on EEGs, electroencephalograms, electrical studies of what's going on in your brain. And MRIs of longtime meditators have shown some very interesting things. There was a study in 2004 in Boston, and the area of the brain that rules attention and interception and sensory processing was thicker and more active. And actually this helps to offset the thinning, the natural thinning that happens with age. So what he's saying here, by implication, is that meditation will help your brain to stay younger. In 2009, in Denmark, they did a study where there's higher gray matter density from meditation, structural differences of the brainstem, which does cardiorespiratory control, and the cardiorespiratory parasympathetic effects and traits were measurable. This causes cognitive, emotional, and immunoreactive impact. So with meditation, you can make yourself more resistant to illness. In 2009 at UCLA, they saw benefits from higher order cognitive processes through meditation. Increased gray matter, increased right hippocampus structure, increased emotional regulation and response control, and therefore to cultivate positive emotions, you can meditate, and you can help you retain emotional stability, helps you to engage in mindful behavior. So meditation not only changes your brain structure and function, but it can lead to better emotional choices, better behavior on your part. Better in the sense of giving to the well-being of the group. It's also showed to increase changes with meditation more than with just plain ordinary relaxation. They've compared the two. And there's potential in this to reduce the effects of mental disorders. Then we can talk about meditation used for pain, stress reduction, and memory. At the University of Manchester in England in 2010, they discovered that changes happened in the experience of pain. Meditation helped to lower the unpleasantness ratings, to lower the pain-evoked response of people suffering pain. And it's becoming popular to treat chronic illnesses like arthritis and depression with meditation rather than drugs. Try meditation first, because there's something to meditation and reducing the emotional impact of pain. 40% of people in England had chronic pain don't get help for it, and because there doesn't seem to be anything that does help it. And pain management is a multi-billion-dollar business. Meditation helps them. It helps hugely with PTSD, and it's being studied in the field by I can't read my handwriting. Sorry. You'll have to look it up in the book. But it's being studied in the field, how meditation affects PTSD, and they have shown that it increases empathy. 8 weeks of meditation lead to brain changes associated with memory, sense of self, empathy, and stress, all improved. Cognitive and psychological benefits also arose or were seen. Now we're going to talk about meditation, cancer, and DNA. In 2008, there was an article in The Lancet about lifestyle choices and your DNA. Health was linked to your lifestyle, and they were able to identify why that happened. Lifestyle can help prevent chromosomes from deteriorating, and the book goes into this big explanation of how the ends of DNA can deteriorate or fuse. We'll skip that. You can read about it, but it's difficult to explain. But suffice it to say that meditation and lifestyle changes help to improve the health of your DNA. So the lifestyle changes they recommend are a vegan diet, aerobic exercise, stress reduction like a mindfulness practice, and support groups, which can just be like a circle of friends. You can protect your DNA with direct psychophysiological self-regulation. And it causes an improved biological effect that's brought about by mindfulness, meditation, and alone it can achieve, it's been shown, positive DNA changes. Now we'll talk about mindfulness and mysticism. Many believe that meditation is the path to transcendence. In almost all religions and almost all indigenous cultures, there's some form of religious experience that includes a form of meditation, vision quests, that sort of thing. And they might have different approaches, but there's a lot of similarity. So for example, repetition of phrases or sounds is usually part of this process. Buddhist prayer, Catholic rosary, Jewish divining. Protestants have this kind of prayer that they focus on. And what it's about is a sense of connection to the whole. And what he didn't mention, I think it's very important, is music. I suppose you could call that chanting, but music. But this connection to the whole is really another word or another description for non-local consciousness. In Geneva, they did a study of complex brain activity associated with meditation and out-of-body experiences, which in some contexts would be called a religious experience. Also, stillness in the brain is related. There's a sense of time and self-awareness disengagement. The mind and the body connection is dissolved. The limbic system can be regulated. The autonomic nervous system regulates relaxation, and they've discovered that these sorts of focused relaxation, meditation, control heart rate, blood pressure, and metabolism. There are emotional and physical effects in reaction to a numinous spiritual aspect of something. So, for example, you feel your hair stand on end, or you feel your skin crawl, or you feel stomach lurching. That's part of this process. And you can control these responses by meditation. And it helps to increase your control, your self-regulation in general. Quieten your heart rate, reduce your stress, calm your emotional responses, lift a depression, increase insight, increase compassion, etc., etc., etc. So meditation has many forms. For people who use it, it completely changes their worldview. They learn that they're not alone, that we're all connected, that there's a life network that connects to something good and larger than ourselves. And if you want to be materialist or atheist, he says, don't start meditating. So it's hard. It's a discipline. It's hard to make it a regular practice. I really recommend Stephan Schwartz's Meditation for Modern Minds. It's on his website. I'll try to remember to include it here, but you know, if you just Google him, you'll find his website, and it's right there under products. And it's a 4-part, 2 parts explanation. 1 part, he talks you through it, and the 3rd part is just the drone sound that facilitates getting into the meditative state. I went ahead and got it, and I have to tell you, it's very, very valuable. I've been listening to it every day, and it's been as helpful or more helpful than anything else I've tried for meditating. I have trouble quieting down my little monkey brain, and it's been very helpful. I strongly recommend it, so you might want to look into that. So most of our waking time is unconscious. We just are into reactive behavior. We do things without even realizing what we're doing. We have thousands of little routine reactions all day long, and they really resist our attempt to make conscious, autonomous control. You know, it's very hard. So meditation focuses you, teaches you how to be in the now, how to make decisions that are not tied to the past or the future, just in the moment. Very, very zen. Makes you aware of your non-local link to beingness. So what have I got here? I've got something here important to read to you. So I'll do this very quickly. There is actually a method, and like I said, I recommend that you look into his Meditation for Modern Minds. But in the meantime, I will very quickly go through the process. You choose a regular time, same place, same time every day if you can. Uninterrupted, quiet. Select your spot. Make that your place where you meditate. Find a central phrase. So there's a phrase or a sentence that you've heard or you've read that deeply impressed you and that you wish to align yourself with. And it might be something from the Bible or another sacred book or a song or a poem, something that has a strong positive association in your mind. Doesn't have to make sense to anybody else, and you can make it up yourself. Keep your phrase a secret. If you tell others, this they'll say your phrase and share it and talk about it and criticize it, and there you go. It loses its impact. Keep it a secret. Examine your life. Consider where you are or where you aspire to be. Consider this from physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual levels. Look for patterns. Look for ways that you want to positively affect yourself in order to contribute to the larger well-being. Choose 4 words of intentional purpose and break them down into this pattern. Find a word that describes the physical change you want to make. And the example he uses for that is if you want to be more mindful of your relationship to food, to what you eat, whether it be veganism or just a diet or, you know, cutting carbs, I don't know, whatever, you know, there's a million varieties of diet. But if that's your physical change you want to make, then your word in the physical would be food. Your mental change, it's your thought processes. You get clarity on that. The other one, trying to find examples. You find a physical, a mental, emotional, and spiritual. I think the hardest one there is the to identify as the mental one, but the book goes through it quite a bit. So you get your 4 words of intention to purpose. You've got your place, you've got your time, you've got your phrase, you've got the words of those 4 different spheres of life you'd like to change. And then make the commitment, look at the clock, and he says you can teach yourself to know when 20 minutes have passed, or you can just set the timer. Say your phrase in your mind and repeat it, and then focus on your words of intentional purpose, and then sit with that. Sit quietly with that. Close your eyes, follow your breath to the still place that leads to the invisible path that leads you home. He says, I want to stress there are many ways meditation can be practiced. One of the various sitting techniques is the usual image that comes to mind when we picture someone meditating, you know, lotus position and all that, but with the mudra, the hands, you know, but that's not the only way. In Japan, there are 3 Buddhist monasteries. One practices what is colloquially called the sweeping hell. They sweep the mountain paths all day. One uses the sitting hell, in which they sit for extended periods. And the third practice is the walking hell. The monks walked a forest mountain night and day in pitch darkness, in a ritual designed to focus their consciousness. Starting at 1 o'clock in the morning, they dressed in white burial robes and carried daggers with which to kill themselves should they fail in their attempt. They commit to walking a nearly 19-mile path that winds up and down the contours of a mountain. They do this every night, regardless of the weather or their physical condition, for a total of 1,000 nights. Very few Westerners are ever taken up, and he talks about someone who does. But you don't have to do that. You can just sit there and meditate. You'll be okay. So that's kind of the process. And the goal is mental coherence, clearing away the noise and focusing within. Chapter 15, happiness spreads like a healthful virus. He says, be a carrier. To be an agent of compassionate, life-affirming change is to do immeasurable good in the world. It can be measured. There is the World Happiness Report. University of British Columbia, Canada, and Columbia University, New York, in 2022, on their 10th anniversary, they did a survey by phone of people from a number of countries, asked them about happiness. They use a formula, the percentage of people who rated themselves as quite happy or very happy, minus the percentage of people who rated themselves as not very happy or not happy at all. And then they get numbers for different countries, you know. So what makes you happy? Not money. That's what they discovered. Let's see, I went ahead and lost my page here again. So the big conclusion was that money can't buy you love. I think, you know, the Beatles could have told them that a long time ago. So there are just 6 different variables. Where did they go? Okay, 5 things that contribute to happiness. When you do something, commit yourself fully and lose the awareness of time. Whatever you do, give yourself over to it so that you aren't thinking about yourself. As you're doing whatever it is you do that makes you feel happy, do it in a manner so that you aren't interrupted by extraneous thoughts while you're doing it. Be proactive in your life, not passive. And although the work may be hard and demanding, work at it effortlessly because you believe in what you are doing. And if you do that, you get into the flow. So they found 6 factors for general happiness. And they are GDP per capita, so, you know, monetary well-being of a nation in general, the healthy years of life expectancy, social support as measured by having someone to count on in times of trouble, trust as measured by a perceived absence of corruption in business and government, perceived freedom to make life decisions, and generosity as measured by recent donations adjusted for differences in income. Differences in social support, incomes, and healthy life expectancy are the 3 most important factors. And the 6th factor that they don't talk about very much, this guy says, is the happiness of others. If other people are suffering, we're all suffering. Happiness of others, there's this emotional contagion that happens, and you can spread the situation. Our emotional situation depends as much on others' emotions as on our own choices, experiences, and actions. We don't put enough emphasis on that. Happiness is contagious. If you're happy, those around you will get happier, even if just casual interactions to the 3rd degree of separation. And it can change lives more than if they get $5,000 raises. So they did studies giving people an extra $5,000 and having a person who made a decision to be happy relate to person A was the happy person, the manifester of the happiness. B was that initial receiver. And B is just exposed to A. Nothing intentional. B exposes himself to C. C was happy because of that exposure. So A is the instigator of the happiness. B is the unwitting receiver of the happiness and still manages to spread it to C. I hope I made that clear. It's a little hard to describe. They also found that there are clusters of happy and unhappy people. If you're happy now, you're more likely to be happy in the future. And there are clusters, not because people choose to stick around happy people, but because happiness is contagious. It spreads. I thought that was fascinating. It's not just it's not just that if you lie down with dogs, you get up with fleas. It's not just that. A friend who lives within a mile of you and becomes happy increases the probability that you will be happy by 25%. Similar effects are seen in co-resident spouses and siblings who live within a mile of the happy person, and also in next-door neighbors. The effects are not seen between co-workers. The effect decays with time and with geographical separation. Space-time. But think about that. If you can manage to be a little happier, people around you are going to be happier too. It's remarkable. Compassionate, life-affirming choices create wellness, and they can feel like a reward. Money, public acknowledgement, that's not where it's at. That the reward is just the feeling itself. Then he says, laughing and singing and smiling tune a group emotionally. They get them on the same wavelength so they can work together more effectively as a group. I've never really understood the desire to be in a church praying together and singing together. It's just never been where it's at for me. It's an individual thing. But the studies here would lend you to believe, well, they have found that group support like that will elevate your emotional well-being, if that's what you need. So, Ritual ceremony is in most cultures, and it creates a non-local linked shared intention. Therefore, we need to understand this in order to enhance or neutralize it. That's why the Nuremberg rallies in early Germany before the war broke out were so effective. The Nazi rallies where you saw the people swooning while Hitler preached. That was that collective shared intention. That's why negative things, remember, they're more powerful, they're more effective. The energy of them, don't use the word energy around Stephan, but the influence of them is more effective. And that kind of answers the question people ask me all the time: how can these horrible people be so successful in their horribleness? Well, that's why. So we can neutralize that effect if we're aware of it. Choices that make you happy make you healthier. A happy heart is a healthy heart. Studies have measured stress by measuring hormones, and they show that you lower stress, you increase your health. There's a link between happiness and lower biological vulnerability. It boosts your immune system. Mood, happiness depends on social relationships and fulfillment. And something that I think I've learned to recognize, not in the book, this is me, when I'm at my most depressed, an effective way, and for some people it's a clinical situation, I'm not diagnosing, I'm simply imparting what I found to be true for myself, that trying to get myself out of my head, out of myself, by doing something for somebody else, sometimes can have a very positive effect on lowering my low mood or my depression. It can be helpful to do good for other people. And this says recognize what makes you feel good and makes you feel satisfied, and do that. It's very pragmatic. It'll make you feel better. In Buddhism, you have to have love and compassion, joy and equanimity. That means like a sense of balance. And they define love as wanting others to be happy. Jesus said it, love your neighbor as yourself. In all traditions, there's a link between happiness, well-being, and love. And these are local and non-local. So the pursuit of happiness is actually featured in the Declaration. That's how important it is. What country is the happiest? Finland. What country is the US? Number 15. So the top countries for happiness on the measurement chart are not happy because of wealth or power. These are societies that are compassionate, life-affirming. They prioritize wellness. They have low fear and high happiness by comparison. They don't worry about healthcare costs. They don't have to. They don't worry about, shelter. And they don't worry about old age. They don't have to worry about any of that because the compassionate society worries about it for them. So chapter 16, social values, social wellness, can we know what works? And the book says the United States is divided because of values. So which values are best? That's a good question. Is there a way to tell? He says, yes, the best values have the greatest state of well-being, provide the greatest state of well-being with the individual, and then also well-being to include the entire society, and as a result, the well-being of the globe and the actual physical planet, the earth itself. So we can we be objective and not theological or ideological about looking at values? He says, yes. Which values are the best? The values that create the greatest social wellness, and that can be measured. So you can test our theories at a state level, he says. So he looked at certain factors, comparing different states based on their self-professed ideological point of view, right or left, what their values are right-wing values or left-wing values. more effective in creating well-being for everybody? That's kind of the question that we're looking at here. So, he says, both sides agree on the importance of families. It's the foundation of social order. He says, we're all basically a living laboratory. So we're looking here at red states versus blue states, conservative states versus liberal states as self-identified, based on voting. So looking, there was a study, red families versus blue families, by two people called Kahn and Carbone. So in the blue areas, what did they see? They saw an investment in women and men, and therefore people were deferring marriage and children to an older average age. They saw them reaping the advantage of having older partners who had higher, better emotional maturity and economic stability and independence. That affected families. They saw greater support to deter teen births. Teen births are detrimental to the overall well-being of the society. And it's a no-brainer. I don't need to explain why. They saw a lower fertility, fewer children being born in families. They saw higher rates of non-marital cohabitation, people willing to live together cooperatively without worrying about putting an ideological stamp on it. This is, by comparison, red areas. They were the most religious. They had the most numbers of marriages, the highest reproductive rate. They feel threatened, actually, if they delay having children or they delay marriage. They feel that their purity, their morality is threatened. Therefore, they have higher divorce rates. They have higher rates of non-marital births. And they feel like this threatens the community, the fabric of the community. So this becomes a big concern for them. And it interferes with their feeling of happiness. So religious people, red states, believe that marriage requires certain partnership, one man, one woman. This is what they believe. The progressives, or blue states, believe that a loving, committed partnership of whatever gender is what is important. So that's measurable. But the real measure, he says, is not what people think about when they're going into a relationship with, hearts in their eyes. It's, does the relationship last? And statistics show that the 9 states with the highest divorce rate are self-professed red states. Red states have a harder time maintaining stable, loving partnerships because they encourage early marriage before the partners are fully mature or have money, and that economic instability is just deadly. Marriage overall is lower in the country. So maybe we need another metric, he says. So let's look at how half of all adults now are married, but what's the median age? The median age of brides is 26.5 years, and the median age of grooms is 28.7 years. So other non-marital living arrangements between adults have increased. Shacking up, that's a professional term. So it seems like we need healthy, stable relationships to have national wellness. Red values lower wellness by all those metrics that they're able to study. The southern states are at the bottom of almost all the metrics. They have the lowest life expectancy, the lowest maternal infant health, and highest maternal infant death, the greatest poverty, the lowest levels of education, the highest drug use, including alcohol? Let me see. Including what? I abbreviated it to the point where I can't read it. Oh, they have mood disorders and PTSD and higher crime and higher rates of mental health as measurable. Like 46% of the people in southern states have mental illness that diagnosed. Anxiety disorders, phobia, PTSD, depression, ADHD, substance abuse, etc. So obviously something is wrong here because the wellness index is very low. Their lifestyle choices seem to be affecting their well-being, and it's measurable with data. So the red states are doing this assault on reproductive rights and health care for women. They push for profit health care. According to WHO, the World Health Organization, the United States is 37th in the world for health care. According to the UN, the US is 50 in maternal mortality. We have a worse outcome of births, higher than in Europe, higher like worse than in Europe, and even some countries in the Middle East and Asia. But we spend more on childbirth. $86 billion a year in 2015. In WHO, according to WHO, the world now, the trend in healthcare, maternal outcomes, etc., it's all improving, but in the U.S. it's going down. And in quality. Mortality today in the United States is mortality today in the United States has gotten worse, twice as bad, between 1990 and 2008. In the U.S., we use 16% of our gross domestic product for health care. In France, they use 1.2%. So they're number one on the list for health care. So they spend way less and they get much better quality as a result. Measurable in outcomes. So illness, the illness profit system is what we're on, not the healthcare system, the illness profit system. And we value profit over wellness. Then he talks about children, and he says in red states, the level of education is lower, reading ability is lower, they have increased diabetes in children, increased obesity, increased teen pregnancy. Evangelical Protestant teenagers are significantly less likely than other groups to use contraception. This could be because evangelicals are also among the most likely to believe that using contraception will send the message that they're looking for sex. It could also be because many evangelicals are steeped in the abstinence movement's warnings that condoms won't actually protect them from pregnancy or venereal disease. A non-fact, we know that's misinformation. We know that is absolutely untrue. Child abuse is higher in rate in these states. In the US, it's 11 times more common as in Italy and 3 times more common as in Canada. In the last 10 years, 4 times the number of children have died at home than all of the US deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan. These are difficult statistics, but this is an indication of our deteriorating well-being. And these statistics are all much higher in red states. The most violent 6 are red states. The most violent 6 are also the most religious, self-described. Texas children are 4 times more likely to suffer abuse than a child from Vermont. 80% of 21-year-olds who had past abuse had psychological issues as adults. So this is a continuing effect on well-being going down the road. Texas has twice as many, compared to Vermont. A child from Texas will be twice as likely to be a dropout, 4 times as likely to be uninsured, 4 times as likely to be incarcerated, and twice as likely to die of abuse or neglect. Data show that socially progressive blue values support well-being and red values don't. And this is not singling out people and pointing fingers at their values for the sake of an ideological point of view. This is measurable data that has been accumulated and studied. It's not a political judgment, it's data. And we have clustered in areas. It's quite obvious, according to political inclination. And you can see that reflected in the wellness index of different states. In ordering society, which value system works to create wellness? That should be our question. Good health, well-being, less violence, lower family violence, lower numbers of heart attacks, fewer sexually transmitted diseases, higher education, longer life. These should be our goals. These are the metrics. So if we look at objective, verifiable health outcomes, like infant mortality, it's not great in the United States, and it's not consistent across all states. Some are much worse, and it depends on how they choose to spend healthcare money. 9 out of the 10 worst, red states. Policies and citizen choices affect lifestyle and affect long-term well-being. So let's measure well-being by counting heart attacks. There's a correlation in areas with a higher sense of well-being and lower heart attacks, mostly because of life choices, smoking, obesity, diabetes, exercise, etc., etc. Also, there's a lower level of education, higher level of poverty in the South, and people are complicit in their choices because they vote for policies that continue these bad outcomes. The longevity in red states is very low, and it's even lower for minorities in red states. Quality of life is low in all the red states they measured, and these values do not support wellness. And then the question, he says, logical question if you're a political operative is to ask, do the blue states have to be required to pay for red states' poor values and poor choices and poor outcomes? Because blue states' federal taxes go to help the red states. And red states are much more likely to not collect enough money in taxes to help themselves. They depend on tax money from the blue states. Personal choice is the only solution. So now we come to the conclusion, leverage points. Now this is from the Commonwealth Fund from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. And of all the places they studied, the U.S. had the lowest outcomes, the worst outcomes in medical care, infant mortality, life expectancy, all because of profit over values. We have the best care in the world when you can get your hands on it. And we have the lowest ranking because of profit, money. Willful ignorance about things like climate. These are leverage points. There are things that can be done. For example, microloans. He says that there's this organization called Kiva at www.kiva.org, where you can make direct loans. You will get your money back, and the money is it's ethically monitored. This is not Trump University. It's ethically monitored, and the money goes to small people, business people in impoverished areas, and you will get your money back. Military meritocracy, which he helped to create. You listen to the average people. It's how they did it. You just listen to the ordinary soldiers. You make bottom-up small changes for the well-being of the people in the group with life-affirming options, and you end up with a much healthier organization and a much more positive outcomes within that organization, both for the members and for what the group can do for the rest of us. And finally, we come to this. To change the beliefs of an entire community, only 10% of the population needs to become convinced of a new or different opinion. At that tipping point, the idea can spread through social networks and alter behaviors on a large scale. So he asks, can those committed to compassionate, life-affirming choices muster the necessary 10%? You tell 10 people, they tell 10 people. So he has a pledge that you can think about. I pledge that at every decision point throughout my day from this day forward, I will ask myself before making the decision, of the options available to me, which is the most compassionate and life-affirming one as I understand it in this moment? I pledge that I will choose that one. It says, what you do with this is now your choice. You are an agent of change. The end. I think this is one of the most important books I have ever read. It's a remarkable book. And I personally want to thank Stephan Schwartz for the impact that he's made on our world and our planet. Because when you hear about his life, it's just remarkable. Please check out my conversation with him and hear what he has to say. As this conversation progresses, we get more and more topical about current events. You're going to want to hear what he has to say. And always keep in the back of your mind that this is somebody who's not a self-described religious or spiritual person per se. So thank you very much for watching. Coming up here, as soon as I can get my act together, I'm going to do a video and do some book giveaways. I'm debating if I want to keep this book. I really value this book. I may force you all to buy it, and Stephan will give me a kickback. No, I'm kidding. And also, The Cult of Trump. So, thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the book. Stay tuned. Keep your eye open for my conversation with Stephan. And we shall prevail. Slánga foil, sláinte.